my wife. Listen, pushing buttons already. This is a debut experience, and you messing everything up, Cherie. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Breakfast. See, you got me all messed up. Behind closed doors with the Brookses. We are sitting here with none other than the infamous co-parents, Deidre and Darren Mason. So good to have you guys on the show. Hit the sounder, Cherie. It's your turn, and just let it go. There we go.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Hola, ¿cómo está? So, guys, we are here today, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking about some things, quite frankly, that a lot of people have been asking us a ton of questions on, and that is, how in the world do y'all do this? So last week, Cherie, if you can really quickly give us a background, we talked about parenting. And Deidre, Darren, I don't know if y'all saw the episode, but boy, we talked about all the mistakes we made. Things that we wished we knew. And
well, not all the mistakes.
Not all of them, but we talked about
a couple of them.
We talked about a few, and basically was like, yo, if there was a few things that we could get back, what would they be? And so today, what I really want to do is kind of pick up and talk about our co-parenting journey. So, Cherie, if you can introduce yourself, come on, let's get it.
I am the magnificent, the wonderful Cherie A. Brooks Jr., and it's great to be here with you guys today. And next to me is
Deidre Mason, the wonderful, the magnificent.
Yes.
Sister of the wonderful and magnificent Cherie Jr.
And lastly, we have
Darren Mason. I'm the serious one in the group.
Don't believe.
Don't believe the hype. Listen, so we have been doing this, guys, for 25 years. We're sitting here in our home here in El Cangrejo, Panama
City, Panama.
And just coming off of our 25th wedding vow renewal, of which Dee and Darren were there. And it was a whole situation.
Beautiful event.
Beautiful event. So glad that y'all could make it. But this isn't the first time that we vacation together at all.
No.
But
So how do we do this?
Oh my.
oh boy.
Right away.
No. Cherie has no. Look, she just jumped. We're not going.
Right
We're
in
not
the fire.
going. Right, not at all.
Jump in.
So let's back
jump
up for a
in.
quick second. I want y'all to put this in the chat. First of all, if you're just joining us, welcome to the show. If you've not tuned in before, please do us a huge favor. Click the like button, subscribe button, share this out to as many people as you can. Let them know that we are live. We chose to do today live because last year this time, we came to Panama City, Panama for the first time, Cherie. And the goal was really to kind of check the boxes to see if the research that we had done was in fact legit, because we were contemplating moving abroad. At first, we were thinking, we'll just do a summer home, a place where we can kind of come and go and da-da-da. But when we got here with them, because they came with us, after 10 days, Cherie, you fell in love and you did not want to leave Panama. And Darren, I remember we was in the car, in the van. They had some sour faces, bro.
Oh yeah.
I was like,
they didn't want to leave.
I was like, they gonna start
Drag
crying.
them out of here.
Right, they were gonna start crying. I was like, really, y'all? Is it? And Cherie, for you, it was the peace. It was the peace of mind.
Yes.
We had spent 10 days with our friends, and we found a place that we wanted to come back and live. 5 months later, we made that happen, and we came back to live permanently. And Deidre and Darren popped up, was our first house guest, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Come that August, they made it known that nobody sleeps in their room until they come here.
That's right.
We had to come to make sure,
It was straight.
straight for us.
Listen.
It meets all our goals. and
All the
guidelines.
accoutrements.
All the accoutrements, right. So, Dee, I know that a lot of people ask you and Darren, like, how do y'all do this? For those that don't know, Deidre is my ex-wife. We were married for a total of 12 years. And Darren and Deidre were married probably about 3 years after Cherie and I got married, maybe?
2001.
2001. So we were married in 1999. But it started off kind of crazy a little bit, and I won't say crazy in terms of drama, but it was sticky, it was tough, it was tight, it was emotional, as expected. And I think that what people see now, it's like, how in the world do y'all make that work? So I don't know who wants to start, but I want to kind of characterize this. how we started versus how we're going. And let's move people through sort of those 3 stages of oil and water, business partners, and now super friends, because we've reached that level, but not everybody is going to necessarily reach that level.
Right. Well, I'll start. I know for me, I had not grown up in an environment where I had ever seen anybody with their exes stay in relationship.
Okay.
And so it was like once you were done, you were done. You went your way, they went their way. So for me, coming into your family and learning that the dynamic of the family was very different for me, because I had never seen that before.
Right.
The only thing I knew, and prior to you, I never dealt with anybody with children, because I always I don't want to deal with no baby mama drama.
Yep.
Because that's all I knew. And so it was very different for me. So even Deirdre reached out, extended the olive branch to me first. And I just was like, I don't know, what does that mean? I don't know, how do we do that? But I didn't know how to be friends with your ex. I didn't know how, we were going to co-parent. I just figured, Justin would come and stay with us. When he was with us. But there would be, I didn't understand the dynamics of the communicating back and forth and how that went, because with my daughter, her father, when we split up, he went on his way. He didn't have anything to do with her. He was not involved in her life, so I never had to deal with that.
Right.
So it was awkward for me. I don't think I would ever characterize it as being ugly.
No.
Right. It was just awkward because I had never done it before, and I didn't know how to accept it. It was strange. I guess is the best way for me. It was just strange. It wasn't, I never felt, any venomous darts or anything. Deirdre was never a drama person or anything like that, so it wasn't that. It was just different.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to relate on a different level.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people and I've heard, a friend of mine, Keith Battle, many of you guys may know, he's a pastor in the DMV, and he says, when people get married, their money doesn't. And what I mean by that is that there are several different levels of commitments in marriages, right? So when you get divorced or when you separate, a lot of times there's still certain connections that you have, and then there are some people that have no connection. And I think the challenge becomes where you got all of those levels, right?
Right.
You have to talk about the kid, but you don't like each other. Or maybe you got divorced under really, really, weird circumstances that don't allow you to even navigate. So how do you push past that stuff? Because I'm convinced a lot of people are forced in co-parenting to deal with stuff they never dealt with in their regular parenting or in their regular marriage. And so now you got all these things going. Deirdre, for you, how was it back in those days in the beginning when, because we were talking last night or the other night, and I know one of the things that you were saying, that you had come to a place where quite frankly, God had spoken to you and said, listen, it's time for you to release some things to him. And can you walk people through a little bit about just sort of how you even began, because you invited Cherie to the table.
Right.
It wasn't the other way around.
Right. So I think step back a little bit into what you said just previously about money. I think that's really just where our challenges were. It wasn't so much, like you said, it wasn't a lot of drama at all, because and then going forward to what you said about God, I was in a place spiritually where I think I was so protected in him that I did not feel any animosity or any malice, I think. Once I realized that forgiveness was for me and not for you. And I decided that I didn't want to pass on unforgiveness or hard-heartedness to our son. I think it was easier. And I know I heard that's one of the few times in my life when I know I've heard the voice of God, and he said, I got you. And he had me in a place financially where I was able to purchase a home and, that type of thing. And he just was walking me through the process of trusting him. And it was almost like a stepping out on faith. So with that, I was able, once going through that process within myself, I was able to then reach out and say, hey, Cherie, You know, and I wasn't, when I reached out, I wasn't expecting us to be best friends or anything, but I wanted to let you know that I was not intending to be that drama queen that was going to bring chaos and confusion and all that to your relationship. I wasn't there. I wasn't expecting that in and of myself. And I've come from a family, conversely from you, that the exes were always welcome. You know, my grandmother was one who never, whenever we had a family event, all the exes were invited. She didn't turn off what she had turned on. You know, they were always individuals outside of the relationship with her child or, extended family. So there was never that cutting off. Now, I mean, if you was just totally out the pocket and crazy, like there was some wall, there was little walls that went up, but still there was a level of cordiality that still in those situations was always present. So her motto was keep love on board, and she meant it to her core, and that's something that we still carry forward in our family relations now. So that's always been something that stuck with me. And even your mom also, we were talking about that, how she and I used to talk, when we lived with her, and she had this, I think I got that piece about passing that poison down from her. And so that's just where I was. And so that allowed me to enter into the relationship with a clear heart and and to press past the challenges. That's basically the business part. Right. We just had to get past and get through the business part. You guys were in unique employment situations, so working for the church and this and that. So it was not the usual. Right. Like, okay, we're going down to the courthouse and we're going to work this out and all that.
Right. Yeah.
So we had to maneuver through that. Yeah. But I think that was our biggest challenge. It was just navigating those waters.
The logistics. Darren, when you came in, and I want to get back to that part, Deirdre, about, and I'm comfortable today just by getting this out. I want to share it. I wanted to be in a public space with people who have asked the question, how is it that you guys have been able to work this out? My ex-wife and her husband attended our 25th wedding vow renewal. When you guys see the pictures come out, you will see that my ex-wife is helping to get my current wife together. Darren and I played golf that morning or the day after, whatever the case may be. We have hung out, smoked cigars, cried together, prayed together, and walked through this process together, Darren. And I know as a man coming into this, you were married before. You didn't necessarily have the greatest co-parenting relationship with your ex-wife. Right. So I know this had to be new. What were some things that was going through your mind in terms of, like, what have I got myself into? Because these jokers are on board, and I don't know if I've ever really seen this like that.
Well, let me see. It was different, especially when I was divorced. We didn't get along. So when I met Deirdre and Justin, you were a strong influence in Justin's life. And I knew, if things were going on, you were going to be there. And Deirdre said, this is how it is. And I jumped on board. I didn't have any issue with it. And I knew that it was important for Justin. And I focused on him. And, we worked it out. And as time went on, we found common relationships, things that we did together. I mean, or you rode bikes, and then I started riding a bike. Swimming, we did swimming. I did, we just found commonality, and it worked, and we still doing it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because, Cherie, I think a lot of times people, they are so busy being overwhelmed with what they feel that they not really taking the time to think about what's in the best interest of what this child is feeling. Right. And I think that one of the things, and when you said that, Darren, You know, a lot of men don't know how to navigate that part. If they come into a relationship where the father's a strong influence, their thought is, I'm not going to be involved because the father is. And it's almost like a hands-off approach. You didn't take that route. No. You were very much a father to Justin in that home. And one of the things that I noticed, and it blessed me to some degree in the moment. I hadn't really thought about it until I saw it. And that was, it was okay for me to back off, as strong-willed as I am, as alpha, if you will, as I am, as type A, and doing all the things. It was okay for me to back off and let you parent that child, and you did it in a way that I didn't do it.
Right. Well, I remember. I don't know if you remember, but I remember we had a conversation, and it was about Justin, and you said, you know, if Justin isn't acting right, you know, get him in line. I'm not there to do it, so you got, he needs that guidance because you weren't there, and so I felt comfortable in initiating and talking and being able to treat him as my own.
Would you say, and Cherie, I know your co-parenting situation with Shantae's biological father was very, very different. And any of you guys can chime in. And I really kind of want to, as y'all have some things that you want to share that pop up along these lines, I really don't have an agenda. But I often think about that permission piece.
Yeah.
Because it's an awkward place where I don't know how much to step in and that sort of stuff. And I knew Justin well enough to know that if you didn't step in and be forceful with him and he needed structure. You were very good at structure, Darren. Your life is much more, I would say, disciplined than mine in terms of regiment. By nature, that's how you move. I don't move that way by nature. Now I've learned to do that, but he needed that. What made you say, you know what? Or maybe you already said it. When I gave you permission, did that carry? Wait, not that you asked for it or anything like that, but it was like you just took the ball and ran with it.
Again, when we had this conversation, Justin was there. So it wasn't just, Justin understood that you were passing that on, that you were...
passing the baton, so to speak.
Yes. That you were still going to be in his life.
Right.
But I was going to be the disciplinarian in the house.
Right.
Primary.
We were going to do things this way as long as you were here with us. I mean, I was going to be the head in that house.
I love it, man. Cherie.
Yeah, and I know for me, when it comes to that permission, Deirdre allowed me to I never tried to be his mother to replace you, but you gave me permission to parent him, to mother him. And that took a lot of the weight off me because, like I said, it was awkward for me. I didn't know what my role was supposed to be, how I was supposed to do it. But you welcomed my opinion. You welcomed, my suggestions, and we all kind of did it. We did it together. It was truly a collective effort. And if I, saw something, or if when he was with us, you let us handle it the way we handled it in our house. And there was never any, that's my son, and you can't. There was never any of that.
No.
Right.
I don't think that, in my mind, it was kind of like, I don't recall ever sitting and thinking how do I want to do this? Do I need to, what is my role in this? Or maybe that's because I'm the biological mother, but I don't remember having those conversations in my head. I feel like, and that's probably true because on the other hand, with Kelly, I think that's what it is. I'm the biological mother, so no, I didn't worry about my role or whatever. But I think with Kelly, I more so was concerned, because of the fact that it's just the opposite of what we have. It was just the opposite with her mom and family. It was like, okay, now how do I navigate? Because I have no contact with her, and I'm trying to make sure that Kelly feels safe, Kelly feels loved, and in my way, but I don't have anybody to bounce that off of because I don't have any communication. Right. So I feel like that was a little tenuous for me. But still, at a point, I was just like, I'm just gonna do what I did.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I know what I'm doing. I love, and if there's any feedback, I'll get it.
Right.
You know, at some point. But I feel like we've been so successful at this because God is the center of it
Yeah,
all. I just really
definitely.
do believe that, and we had a heart for. Even if it was awkward, if it wasn't awkward, whatever, we just had a heart of love going into it. And for Justin, ultimately for each other as we grew to know each other, but even as brothers and sisters in Christ,
Right.
you know, we knew we had to move a certain way in order to be pleasing in His sight.
Yeah.
Right.
You
right.
know, and then the relational piece was able to grow,
Right.
you know, out of that. So, I think we would be remiss if we didn't say that, because
Right.
everybody's looking at, well, how do y'all do it? Well, guess
It's
what?
not us.
Right.
It's not us.
Aside from God being in it all,
Right.
and a level of maturity
Right.
as well, you know, we wouldn't be able to do it. We
Right.
really wouldn't.
Right. And with that in mind, I think also all of us, and you talked about maturity, we focused on what was best for Justin.
Right.
It was always about him. It was never about how I felt, how you felt, how Glenn felt. It was never about our feelings. It was what was best for him. And the blessing is that when crisis came, when he got ill, we were a united front
Right.
before that, because
Right.
that would have been really ugly.
Difficult and
That could have been
Yes.
really, really a tenuous situation when he took ill, and you know we're driving up from Atlanta, and he's here. You know, because in my mind it's like I play it back now, and I'm like, that could have been so, you know, us blaming. Well, why was he over there? Why
Right.
wasn't he with you? You know,
Right.
that
Right.
whole it
Right.
could
Right.
have got really ugly. But because we had already built this, we were already a tribe.
Yeah.
We were
Foundationally,
already a
solid.
tribe, and we're
For
moving
sure.
together when that happened. And I think that's one thing people don't think about. You're not doing this for you. You're not doing it for today. You're doing
Right.
it for tomorrow.
Right.
Right.
You know, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't get past yourself when you need to be
Right.
united, you're not going to be united.
Exactly.
Cherie, when you say that, and I kind of want to piggyback off of that, you know, for those of you guys who are just jumping on, welcome to Behind Closed Doors with the Brookses. Cherie and I are sitting here with our friends and co-parents, Deirdre and Darren Mason, and we're talking about our journey, how it started versus how it's going. And when we started, I would say that to a large degree, we had the ickiness of oil and water, but not the toxic part of it.
It was olive oil versus tar.
Ah,
That's a great
Yeah,
way to
yeah.
explain
Salad
it.
oil.
Yes,
yeah, it was separating a
It
little
wa-
bit.
Right.
And the separation for us was, and when we talk about oil and water, many of y'all know that don't mix,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Oil and water, when they come together, they separate. If you look at a bottle of balsamic vinaigrette, if you will, and you can see it begins to separate. Our approach was separate, but our hearts were the same.
Yes.
And I want to speak to that a little bit, because we got people who are listening to this, y'all, who don't know God. Or they have a semblance of a relationship with God,
Right.
but he's really not the head of their life.
Right.
Right? They are parenting in a way that, quite frankly, is out of their control to some degree. And so I wonder if there's a work that we attached to our relationship with God, because here's the other part. We know plenty of people who profess Christ,
Oh,
Who
right.
don't get this
love
right.
God,
Yeah.
Exactly.
but cannot make a co-parenting situation work with the love of Jesus. You understand me? Like, I promise you. So I'd like to kind of unpack that just a little bit. And if y'all remember, like, were there some practical things that we did to kind of move from that oil and water to business partners to now super friends level? How did that look, and how can people take sort of a page from that?
I think it started with our own individual work, knowing who we were in
Right.
Christ, and then also recognizing Justin wasn't any of ours. He's God's child first and foremost.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, you know, he loaned them to the two of you, and then we came along as a part of that. And I think I'm not super spiritual or spooky or anything, but really I think it's knowing our place in God's order. and knowing that we're not here to serve ourselves, but it's to serve other people. And for us in this situation, I was here not just to be your helpmate, but to be a helper to you in parenting Justin. That was part of my role, was to help. It wasn't to cause division. It wasn't to create havoc. It was to help the best that I could. And
That's good.
I think as far as any tangible work, it was us talking. It was really just communicating, sharing our thoughts, sharing, our expectations, and we had disagreements, but it never got ugly. It never got nasty.
Right.
We could agree to disagree, or we would talk it out and come to, a middle ground, a compromise that was suitable for everybody. But I think the biggest mistake most people is they don't talk.
True.
They just don't talk.
It's funny because I really think that I think that stems from a lack of skill. They don't know how to talk.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just a desire. Darren, when you and I started talking, I initiated because temperamentally and positionally, I was built like that.
Right.
Right? What you don't know about this one is if you begin to open up a door, he will barge in. He is not timid or shy. And listen, we get on the golf course, man, and it is a laugh fest from hole one to however many we play that day. So what I realized was somebody's got to go first.
Right.
Somebody's got to go first, and you both have to practice yielding.
Yes.
Being able to it's almost like a right away. Like when you had an issue and you called me and said, man, I don't understand Justin in this regard. This is what he's doing. I remember we would actually say, we're talking about practicality. I remember when we got to, I would say, past Oil and Water, maybe business partners. We lived in Marlton, Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Y'all lived in Severn, and that was a 45-minute drive from one end to the other. Every other weekend we would get them, and y'all would have them. And we would meet in the middle.
Right.
It didn't start off that way.
Right.
It started off me taking them all the way home and coming to pick them up and that sort of stuff. But then I had a conversation. This no longer works for me.
Right.
Can we work something out? And I remember that being, for me, a communication turning point. Because now we would get there, and that meeting point was a restaurant.
Right.
It started out as Jasper's when that was on 301,
Right.
and then we moved it to Carrabba's
Right.
when they built Carrabba's.
Right.
We would sit and we would have dinner on the afternoon that we would make the exchange.
Yeah.
Right.
But dinner wasn't just a fun fest, it was a note comparing session.
Strategy meeting.
Strategy meeting. Can we talk a little bit
was
about that?
business meeting.
Listen,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about like the willingness to sit down at a table and discuss? You said it earlier, Darren. What went on in your house, that's the rules for your house. But we also collaborated on what
Having a
do
lot of the
we
same.
need to do, adjustments we need to make so that this kid ain't going from, one extreme to the other in terms of styles. Can anybody, can we jump in and talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, you said it. It's creating an atmosphere of consistency from one place to the next. And I think I started listening to the beginnings of a Instagram post somebody did, and it sounded like was a woman, and she was a co-parenting situation, and she was woofing at the husband or the child's father about, you run your house like a drill sergeant and so forth. And then she was saying, and I gathered, because I turned it off and we went on to do something else. And I was listening in the car, and she was, I guess her point was, I don't run my house that way. The child shouldn't have to deal like that, blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha.
Well, knowing our son is a certain kind of son.
Sort of like his
special.
Love you,
daddy.
Justin.
He's special. We love
Wait a minute. There's some shade. There's some shade going on here. I hear a party might be happening.
And any teenage boy,
Absolutely.
or, no different.
Absolutely.
But we had to come together to figure out the best way to come against those things, the best way to keep that in those attitudes
Right.
and those flip offs in line, you
Right.
know. So it wasn't like, when he went to your house, he was able to do whatever, whenever. And then when he came home, and actually sometimes we took cues from you guys. It's like, because Justin is much more your temperament, Glenn, than he is me or Darren's. He does, he has some part of my temperament as
Right,
well, but
right.
he is primarily your temperament. So
Especially
in
when
my
he was
eyes,
younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in my eyes, it was like, yeah, you need to deal with that. You tell me how to work that.
Or,
You know?
or we would just ask,
Right.
he's doing this. What do you
Yeah,
think? What's the
right,
best
right.
thing we can do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
To
you would
kind
give
of
it to
curb
us,
that.
and we'd be like, okay, we'll implement that.
Right.
it'll
And one of
work.
the things that I loved about you guys, and this started at the table, and that's why I want to encourage you, if you are out here and you're listening to this, and maybe you're catching a replay, I think the biggest win for you is to figure out where you guys have common ground and shoot to grow that. And so for you and I, Darren, it was a tangible thing. You like golf, I like golf.
Right.
You like cycling, I like cycling. That was our common ground. And what I would do is I would purposely and with great intentionality, when we talked, it was about those things, and then you would open up and we would share. And so it gave me insight as to how you think. It gave me insight as to how you move, how you saw things. And so for me, it was easy to now say, all right, based on what I know about you, this is how you handle Justin.
Yes.
You do this, because I'm not telling you to do what I would do.
Right.
I'm talking to you based on how you move. And the vice versa, I would glean from you, and I'm like, okay, this is where you're going to have to step your structure game up, bro. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, and I want to encourage people, if you're looking at this and you're listening to this and you're saying, well, how in the world are they able to do it? Look, we did that work and it came out really well, because now we're able to compare notes, and you guys were always wide open to listen. We ain't got all the answers.
Right.
And what do you think? You know what I'm saying, Shreed? You got something you want to?
Yeah, and I think just to go back, even before that, the biggest work was you two had to do your work on
Yes.
forgiveness.
Yes.
And you guys had to not resolve old issues, but you guys had to let that go and be able to move beyond it. And for D, you had to you had to be able to forgive,
Right.
and for his transgressions, you had to apologize. And I think it starts there, because you'll get divorced for whatever reason, and you'll think you just move beyond that. You have to heal.
Yes.
You have to heal. You got to go through your mourning process. You have to heal in order to make it even possible to be able to communicate
Right.
with your ex, to be able to have those conversations. Because if there's still unforgiveness, that's where those shots come from. That's where that venom comes from.
Right.
And it comes from, it'll be unexpected. Everything could be good for a couple of years, and then somebody makes a shot, and you're like, where did that come from? Because they never got over it.
Right.
They never really moved on. And I think that was the beginning, was you both committing to doing your work and making sure you both were whole first.
Right.
Which made it easier for me and Darren to come in and just step in and be like, okay, because if it was crazy between the two of you guys,
Yeah, y'all would have
it
never
wouldn't.
been able to-
I could have talked to you all day long, but
Yeah,
it
but
wouldn't have meant-
I would be the nut.
Right.
And so at that
Right.
point, it's like, that
And
doesn't work.
I
Go ahead,
agree
Shreed.
with that,
Yeah.
Cherie, that is definitely the forgiveness piece, the working through, like you said, there's a grieving process that you go through. And I think that's the part where people get hung up
Yep.
sometimes. Because you will, the death of the things that you planned, the goals you had
Right.
as a couple, all of those things, that has to slowly die.
right.
And that is a process. And it was a process for me. Sometimes I will be fine. I never allowed, even in the process though, you got to keep check on your emotions
Right,
too.
right.
But I never, because in saying that, I never allowed my emotions to get to the point where I was acting out, or
Right.
that to that degree, even in going through that. But it is a process of, when you see your spouse moving on with somebody, your ex-spouse move on with somebody
Right.
else, their spouse
There's a
now,
grievance,
their
right.
friend or whatever, there's a degree of jealousy
Right.
or envy that takes place, but it's a natural
Right.
progression that you
Right.
go through, and that also is a place of release. And and it gets better over time.
Right.
And it, with the right attitude and the right understanding and awareness, it could happen faster.
Right,
You
right.
know, and it's an easier transition, but it is a process that you must go through.
Right. It's like you said, it's a grieving process, and I
Yeah.
think people don't give themselves time to grieve. They don't give themselves permission to
Exactly.
grieve. Like you said, the jealousy, all of that, because you had plans.
Exactly.
You had this idea. This was going to be when you got married. It wasn't we gonna get married and then get divorced.
Right.
It was like
And we got
you know,
12 years to make it
Right,
good.
right,
No,
right,
that's not
right.
what we said. at all.
Right. Right. And like
Not
for-
12 years a slave.
Right.
Lord, Lord.
And so, like for me, I was married twice
yeah.
before,
Right.
and so neither of those marriages, I didn't get in them thinking I was going to get divorced.
Correct.
And so even in those, there was a process I had to go through to get over those. Now mine was a shorter period, so it didn't take me as long. And particularly like with my second husband, and this always freaks people out. My second husband, I mean, we were the best of friends. We were friends, and our marriage ended because he had some desires, some things he wanted that I was like, I can't do that. And so it was a really amicable divorce with that situation. But there still was a grieving because I never got into it with the expectation of it ending.
Right.
You know, and I think that people have to give themselves permission to do that. And I think either what we typically do is we either just move on and act like it didn't happen.
Right.
And never deal with those emotions, never deal with our feelings. And then, you know, it bubbles up eventually over time. Or we act out
Yes.
on it. And that's what I had been used to seeing was the acting out part.
Right.
Everybody I knew that had broken up from somebody, it was fussing and fighting and mean and nasty. And I was like, I don't want that.
Right.
Right.
And that's why I think it was such a shock for me, even seeing how your families moved together, because your families were intertwined before you guys even got
Exactly.
married.
Right.
So there was history here. It wasn't like y'all just met and then y'all knew each other. You
Right.
know, your families were intertwined. So even seeing that, I'm like, well, how they friends? And they what? Huh? And who was best friends with? So they be at the family.
Listen,
Everybody at the family
Everybody.
function. Everybody at
Listen.
the family function. I'm like,
I remember
okay.
Cherie would be like, and who's that? And who was she connected to?
I was
And
like-
oh, so
Like, okay.
D, when you say that, I now am beginning to get flooded with some memories of seeing this before we did this. And up until now, I did not I don't think I placed credence on that subliminally showed me what it could look like to move past how I feel, to move past what was, our issues. Because there's a level of shame and there's a level of guilt that men go through, particularly in my case where, and I've said this publicly, I've written about it, put it in books, workshops, our MAPS community have heard this 1,000 times, and that is 98.9% of what we went through was my fault. And I've said, you and I have reconciled and done all that, but the shame that comes with that
Right.
is enough to make you back up and say, I ain't messing with, because I don't want to revisit
Right.
your failures.
Right.
Now I'm beginning to realize that with grandmother and granddaddy and all of your aunts and your uncles, and for those, full disclosure, Deirdre and I's families have known each other for years prior to us even being born.
Right.
So let's just deal with that part. So we realize that we're in a very unique scenario where our families were family friends in that way. So you couldn't necessarily, like I couldn't go to my grandmother's house
And not see
and be
her
mistreating you,
No.
because this has happened in real life.
No.
I couldn't go to my grandmother's house to visit my grandmother, be mistreating her in our marriage, and then not hear, you need to get your S in order. And she was a praying woman, but she cussed. And it would be one of them, bend your ear types to come in, let me talk to you.
Right.
And I don't, and she would tell me, Martha ain't got no more times to call me to tell me about how you are mistreating her daughter. I don't know what's wrong, but fix it.
Right.
And so before she got up off this planet, she got to see us, now it wasn't in
Yeah.
a marriage, but she got to see us reconcile a relationship gone south because of our ignorance, because of my emotions. And I say all that to say, I think it's important for people to see what right looks like.
Right.
I think it's important. And if you're the first one in your family to figure this out, there are people that's going to come behind you and be like, oh, it can be done. We talked about, we're talking about how it started versus how it's going. And I think that we have absolutely proven for 25 years now that this can be done.
Yeah.
Right.
And the fact that we're sitting here in Panama City, Panama, where we live, and they've now been here to visit.
And they're staying in our
3
house
times.
with us.
And they stay in here.
They're in the guest room.
Listen.
The approved guest room.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And ain't no swinging
Ain't
going
no
on.
swinging and nothing crazy. Ain't no swinging some golf
Oh, yeah,
club.
because we get that too.
Right. Like, wait. I mean,
really?
the side eye.
Right,
Like,
right.
really?
No. We are friends.
So y'all in the life.
No pineapples outside the door.
Look, talking about, so y'all living liberated, huh? Yeah, I got you. We all do need some help. Then they turning all that stuff again. But
Right,
the point I'm
right.
making is I think it's important for you to figure out how do you get around people who doing it, doing it at a high level, willing to be super transparent, vulnerable, and then give you tips, tools, and strategies. For those of you guys that don't know, Sheree and I run a community called MAPS, Marriages and Parenting Successfully. It's a relationship academy that we've been overseeing for the last 7 years. It's an online community. All the information is in the description below, where we teach and train people how to do this. And we just thought it was really, really important for y'all to meet publicly. We shot a video last year, and I've been contemplating how do I release that. The audio wasn't very good. We weren't really prepared. But I said to myself, I am not going to let this time go by without us sitting down, because this is a full circle moment for us.
Yes.
Right.
Y'all help us discover this newfound freedom that we
Right.
have. And there's a connection that will ever go down in history as, no, this is kind of our shared experience for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And-
Go ahead, babe.
Yeah, and one thing I would say, like you talked about the 3 levels. There's oil and water, there's business partners, and super friends. Not everyone is going to reach super friends.
Right.
This is not normal. Let's just say that. Most couples, I believe that you can get beyond oil and water if you put the focus on the main thing, which is the child. You can get beyond that it doesn't have to be ugly, it doesn't have to be icky, that you guys can address, your co-parenting as a partnership, which is what it is. It's a partnership, and you can handle it that way so that it's beneficial for the kids. It's not, and I have to remind couples in our community all the time, because they're like, well, we want to be, I was like, it's taken work to get to this point, and not everyone can achieve this. I mean, Lord willing, it would be great if everyone could, but it takes all 4 participants willing to participate in that process. And unfortunately, in many cases, not everybody's on board with this level of a relationship, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to get to this level, but you do need to be in partnership so that you guys can do what's best for the child. And I think if you can keep the child the focus and doing what's best for them, that's all that's required to be, effective as a co-parent, is making sure that you guys communicate and you're working together in partnership to be able to make sure the child is taken care of.
Right. So our guy, Corwin Sea-Dog Oglesby, just jumped in the room. What up, C? Appreciate seeing you and Jessica here for our 25th wedding anniversary vow renewal. And I just kind of want to piggyback as we kind of land our ship a little bit. I think it's really important for people to realize that we are very clear that not everybody is going to get to this level. But what we also are clear on, there is a work that can make the level you are on much sweeter.
Yes.
And I want to encourage you that if oil and vinegar or oil and water is the level that you're on, how do you get that from the sludge crude oil to the olive oil?
Right.
Does that make? How do we thin that oil out a little bit so that the separation isn't quite as deep? And D, you said something earlier, and I think that the way you do that is to focus on what's most important. Keep the main thing, and that's that child's life. Something that all 4 of us have experienced, and that is, Justin is now 30.
Yes.
He is grown and fully grown. But a number of years ago, he had a very, very debilitating disease that struck him in a way that could have taken him out of here. We came together as a unit in a way that caused people who were watching to marvel. We celebrated a New Year's Eve where I got to watch his two mothers feed him because he couldn't.
Yes.
Darren and I were able to sit and figure out where we're going to go get something to eat, and we were talking to the staff and doing all those kinds of things. I'm painting this picture on purpose because there's going to come a day where your kid is going to need y'all to be unified.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Whether
I
it's
don't know what
marriage
your
or
situation,
whatever
right?
it is.
whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Exactly.
walking down the aisle
Right.
or something, you're going to have to get outside of yourself
Yes.
and create an atmosphere for them to shine.
That part.
You become
The
the
backdrop.
dim light,
Yeah.
and they become the center of that light. And I think what you said, Cherie, too, about not everybody getting there. This is a. I don't want to say this is not normal because I think this should be normalized, especially in our community. I want to say this: we come out of a very unique ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because of the family dynamic that I had, the family dynamic or the friendship dynamic our families had, and then relationally with God, in and of ourselves, individually as a group, and just that's what created this unique situation.
Yeah.
But I believe that the work you guys do publicly, hopefully it will help to normalize this type of thing because, like you said, on whatever level you're at, just making it the best level. If there are children involved, if they're not children involved, even if they're not children involved, you should still be able to communicate with that person because you own something, even if if it's a dog. A lot of times people they be hiring or lawyers trying to do a custody case over the dog. So it could be a car, it could be anything. But you just keeping.
The lines
Just
of
being
communication.
the best you can be.
Absolutely.
Let's start there.
Absolutely.
If you are the best you can be, it shouldn't be a problem to come together and then create a situation where you're not at each other's throats.
Right.
Any closing remarks that you guys want to share with people as we kind of bring this to a close? And by the way, y'all, if you are catching this by way of replay, do me a favor, load the comments up. If you got questions, we'll dip back in and answer. We're kind of trying to figure out, is there a space for this kind of conversation? Because this ain't normal, and it should be.
Right.
We're trying to figure out, how do we normalize what we doing, right? And y'all's questions will help us do that. But is there anything that you guys want to share? Darren, we'll start down on your end. Go ahead.
I would just say, keep the lines of communication open. Be willing to communicate with each other, and be open to receiving a relationship. It doesn't have to end just because you're divorced.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And that relationship can be at whatever level.
Right.
You don't have to vacation together. I think
Right.
this is that far of the spectrum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to go all the way to, I don't want to use the word extreme, you don't have to go all the way to that end
Right.
to be in relationship.
Right.
There's so many different levels of relationship. I mean, you should at least be able to be cordial in
That
each
part.
other's presence. And I think that's where we started. It
Yes.
was like, even with just a heart to at least be cordial
Right.
when we were with each other, and respectful of each other. And that's a major thing.
Yeah. And I would
That
just
is
say,
major.
going back to let love lead.
Yes.
Let love lead. It's not. It's not about you. It's about serving others. And if you're willing to serve each other, you can get through this, and you can have a relationship with your co-parents that's going to demonstrate love to your children. And that's the last thing I'll say is, one thing that blesses me more than anything is to see when we're all together and Justin's in the room, I notice his face.
Yes.
And the joy on his face of knowing all his parents are there,
Yeah.
all his parents are together, that there's
Yeah.
no backbiting, there's no,
Right.
it gives him a sense of peace.
Yes.
He doesn't have to worry about if he, does something that's going to offend you or he's going to offend me.
Yes.
It gives him peace to just be him.
Right.
And he doesn't have to worry about trying to please one parent over the
Yeah.
other. He can just be him.
Yeah. I think about some of our adult interactions with Justin and Shantae, for that matter.
Right.
But I think foundationally, and C-Dog put it in the chat, I cannot overshadow, when you talk about love, I think that we, all four of us, uniquely have a relationship with God that we all individually have recognized that because we have been forgiven much, we have to love much.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you know, that really supersedes everything, even when we're not paying attention to it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Underpinning.
It's the
Yeah.
underpinning of, I'm not going to let Justin pop off to me about Darren,
Right.
because that's my guy.
Right.
He's not just your bonus dad.
father, right.
Right.
That's my dude. So, like, I'm not just like I ain't gonna let nobody, you know, as a father, you know, I'm not gonna let him just talk to his mother any old kind of way.
Right.
You know, so the point I'm making is that I want you guys to really figure out what does that look like. If that is you creating and opting in for a relationship with God, if that is you deciding that, you know what, your way hasn't worked up until now, and so now it's time to try something new.
Right.
If that is getting into a community, we have a coaching community. There are others out there. I think ours is the best, quite frankly. However, I'm sure there are other community counseling, whatever it takes for you to figure out, how do I show up solid? Because if y'all ain't straight, y'all ain't solid, it ain't happening. And then this is where we get to see this cycle repeat itself.
Exactly.
And just like Deirdre said earlier, she has positioned herself in a way that gives her son a bird's eye view of what it looks like to love anyway. He will go in and he will treat his wife that way.
Right.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it's in him now.
I believe
that.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So,
Yes, I
so,
believe that.
so when that day comes for him, and I think that this is where parents, you get a unique opportunity to sort of steer that ship without
Yes.
necessarily having to control it.
Right.
With that being said, guys, I appreciate you guys. I don't know what C-Dog said.
He said he glad y'all didn't make it because now him and Darren are friends. This is not about you, C-Dog.
C-Dog, we're not. This is
not
not
about
this is
you,
not
sir.
about you.
My man C-Dog.
Right. That is the fearsome threesome. You do not want to see
man,
us
you
on
don't
the
wanna
golf
see us on the
course.
golf
You-
course.
that's
Whoa,
a,
sir.
Whoa.
that's a problem. So with that being said, guys, here's what I can promise you. You cannot get to any place of significance by yourself, y'all. We all need some help, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next edition of Behind Closed Doors with the Brookses. There'll be periods of time where we'll invite the co-parents to come in and talk about some things. Maybe there's some Q&A that you guys have. Do me a favor, put it in the chat. Also, check out the description. Follow us, like us on YouTube. Follow us, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys the next time. If we can get this outro to play, but we can't. So, therefore,
I was frozen. Like, is it still
yeah,
shot?
it's
We still live.
yeah, we are still
okay.
We're still y'all be good. We'll see y'all the
Take
next
two.
Take care.